Hare Krishna, welcome back to Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi, and we are continuing to read teachings of Lord Caitanya by His Divine Grace. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're starting chapter number 24, Talks with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When Lord Caitanya met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya at Jagannath Puri, the Bhattacharya, being the greatest logician of the day, wanted to teach the Lord Vedanta philosophy. Since the Bhattacharya was an elderly man, the age of Lord Chaitanya's father, he took compassion on the young sannyasi and requested him to learn Vedanta Sutra from him. Otherwise, the Bhattacharya maintained it would be difficult for the youthful Lord Caitanya to continue as a sannyasi. When the Lord agreed, the Bhattacharya began to teach him in the temple of Jagannath. The Bhattacharya spoke to the Lord about the Vedanta Sutra continually for 7 days, and the Lord heard him without speaking a word. On the 8th day, the Bhattacharya said, "You have been hearing the Vedanta Sutra from me for the past week, but you have not asked any questions, nor have you indicated whether I am explaining it nicely, so I cannot tell whether you are understanding me or not." "I am a fool," the Lord replied. "I have no capacity to study the Vedanta Sutra, but since you asked me to hear you, I am trying to listen. I am simply listening to you because you said that it is the duty of every sannyasi to hear the Vedanta Sutra. But as far as your explanation is concerned, that I cannot understand." Thus, the Lord indicated that in the Mayavadi Sampradaya there are many so-called sannyasis who, even though illiterate and unintelligent, hear the Vedanta Sutra from their spiritual master just as a matter of formality. Although they listen, they do not understand anything. As far as Lord Caitanya was concerned, the reason he said he did not understand the explanation of the Bhattacharya was not because it was too difficult for him to understand, but because he did not approve of the Mayavadi interpretation. When the Lord said that he was an uneducated fool and could not follow the exposition, the Bhattacharya replied, "If you do not follow what I am saying, why don't you inquire? Why do you simply sit silently? It appears that you do have something to say about my explanations." "My dear sir," the Lord replied, "as far as the Vedanta Sutra itself is concerned, I can understand the meaning quite well, but I cannot understand your explanations. There is nothing difficult about understanding the meaning of the original aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, but the way you explain them obscures the real meaning. You do not elucidate the direct meaning, but imagine something and thus obscure the true meaning. I think that you have a particular doctrine you are trying to expound through the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra." Unquote. According to the Muktika Upanishad, there are 108 Upanishad, 108. Among these are 1. Isha, 2. Kena, 3. Katha, 4. Prashna, 5. Mundaka, 6. Mandukya, 7. Taittiriya, 8. Aitareya, 9. Chandogya, 10. Brihad Aranyaka, 11. Brahma, 12. Kaivalya, 13th Jabala, 14th Shvetashvatara, 15th Hamsa, 16th Aruneya, 17th Garbha, and 18th Narayana Upanishad. The 108 Upanishads contain all knowledge about the Absolute Truth. Sometimes people ask why Vaishnavas use 108 prayer beads for chanting the holy names. We think it is because there are 108 Upanishads containing full knowledge of the Absolute Truth. On the other hand, some Vaishnava transcendentalists think that the 108 beads represent the 108 companions of Lord Kṛṣṇa in his rasa dance. Lord Caitanya protested against misinterpretation of the Upanishads, rejecting any explanation which did not give their direct meaning. The direct interpretation is called Abhida Vritti, whereas the indirect interpretation is called Lakshana Vritti. The indirect interpretation serves no purpose. There are 4 kinds of understanding. Direct understanding, the first, pratyaksha. Second, hypothetical understanding, anumana. Third, historical understanding, aitihya. And fourth, understanding through sound, shabda. Of these 4, understanding from the Vedic scriptures the sound representations of the Absolute Truth is the best method. Traditional Vedic students accept understanding through sound to be the best. The stool and bone of any living entity are considered to be impure according to the Vedic literature. Yet the same Vedic literature asserts that cow dung and conch shell are very pure. Apparently, these statements are contradictory, but because cow dung and conch shells are considered pure by the Vedas, they are accepted as pure by the followers of the Vedas without argument. If we try to understand the statements by indirect interpretation, creating some hypothesis, then we challenge the evidential authority of the Vedic statements. In other words, Vedic statements cannot be accepted according to our imperfect interpretations. They must be accepted as they are. If they are not accepted in this way, there is no authority in the Vedic statements. According to Lord Caitanya, those who try to give some personal interpretation of Vedic statements are not at all intelligent. They mislead their followers by inventing their own interpretations. In India, there is a class of men known as Arya Samajists who say that they accept the original Vedas only and reject all other Vedic literature. The motive of these people, however, is to give their own interpretation. According to Lord Caitanya, such interpretations are not to be accepted. They are simply not Vedic. Lord Caitanya said that the Vedic statements of the Upanishads are like the sunlight. everything is clear and very distinct when it is seen in the sunlight. The statements of the Vedas are similarly clear and distinct. The Mayavadi philosophers simply cover the sunlight with the cloud of their misinterpretation. Lord Caitanya then said that all the Vedic statements of the Upanishads aim at the ultimate truth, known as Brahman. The word Brahman means the greatest, and the greatest should immediately be understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all emanations. Unless the greatest possesses 6 opulences in full, he cannot be called the greatest. The greatest is therefore the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.12, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa, is accepted by Arjuna as the Supreme Brahman. The conceptions of the impersonal Brahman and the localized Supersoul are contained within the understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whenever we speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we add the word Sri, indicating that he is full with 6 opulences. This means that he is eternally a person. If he were not a person, the 6 opulences could not be present in fullness. Therefore, whenever it is said that the Supreme Absolute Truth is impersonal, what is meant is that his personality is not material. To distinguish his transcendental body from material bodies, some philosophers have explained him as having no material personality. In other words, his material personality is denied, and his spiritual personality is established. In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.19, this is clearly explained. Apanipado javano grahita pashyatya chakshun sa shrinotya karna saveti vedyam nachatasya stivetta tam ahur agiryam purusham mahantam. Quote, the Absolute Truth has no material legs and hands, but he has spiritual hands by which he accepts everything offered to him. He has no material eyes, but he has spiritual eyes by which he can see everything and anything. He has no material ears, but he can hear everything and anything with his spiritual ears. Having perfect senses, he knows past, future, and present. Indeed, he knows everything, but no one can understand him, for by material senses he cannot be understood. Being the origin of all emanations, he is the supreme, the greatest, the personality of Godhead. Unquote. There are many similar Vedic hymns which definitely establish that the Supreme Absolute Truth is a person who is not of this material world. The Hayashirsha Pancharatra explains that although in each and every Upanishad the Supreme Brahman is first viewed as impersonal, at the end the personal form of the Supreme Lord is accepted. Another example is Shri Upanishad. the 15th mantra, of which runs as follows. Okay, Jai Ishopanishad. Hiranmanyena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushan apavrinu satya dharma yadrishtaye. Quote, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the maintainer of the whole universe. Everyone is sustained by your mercy. Therefore, devotional service unto you is the true religion of life. I am engaged in such devotional service, and so I request you to please maintain me and ever increasingly engage me in your transcendental service. You are the eternal form of Satchit Ananda, and your effulgence is spread all over the creation, just like the sunshine. As the sun disk is covered by glaring sunshine, so your transcendental form is covered by the Brahma Jyoti. I desire to find you within that Brahma Jyoti. Therefore, please remove this glaring effulgence. Unquote. In this verse, it is clearly stated that the eternal, blissful, cognizant form of the Supreme Lord is to be found within the glaring effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti, which emanates from the body of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the personal body of the Lord is the source of the Brahma Jyoti, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.27. That the impersonal Brahman is dependent on the Supreme Personality is also explained in the Haya Shirsha Pancharatra. In every other Vedic scripture, such as the Upanishads, whenever there is talk of the impersonal Brahman in the beginning, the Supreme Personality is finally established at the end. The Ishopanishad mantra we quoted above indicates that the Supreme Absolute Truth is both impersonal and personal eternally. But his personal aspect is more important than the impersonal one. Jai. We're going to stop here for today. No? Okay. It's a very short chapter, actually. Okay, let's continue. According to a mantra in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yatova imani bhutani jayante, this cosmic manifestation is an emanation from the Supreme Absolute Truth, and it rests in the Supreme Absolute Truth. Thus, the Absolute Truth has been called the ablative, causative, and locative performer, and as such, he must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for these are the symptoms of personality. As the ablative performer, he is the source of all thinking, feeling, and willing in this cosmic manifestation. Without thinking, feeling, and willing, there is no possibility of the arrangement and design of the cosmic manifestation. Then again, he is the causative, for he is the original designer of the cosmos. And he is locative. That is, everything is resting in his energy. These attributes are all clearly attributes of his personality. In the Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.3, it is said that when the Supreme Personality of Godhead desires to become many, he glances over material nature. This is confirmed in the Aitareya Upanishad 1.1.1 with the words Sa Aikshata. Quote, "The Lord glanced at material nature. The cosmic manifestation did not exist before his glance. Therefore, his glance is not materially contaminated. His seeing power existed before the material creation. Therefore, his body is not material. His thinking, willing, feeling, and acting are all transcendental. In other words, it should be concluded that the mind by which the Lord thinks, feels, and wills is transcendental, and that the eyes by which he glances over material nature are also transcendental. Since his transcendental body and all his senses existed before the material creation, the Lord also has a transcendental mind and transcendental thinking, feeling, and willing. This is the conclusion of all Vedic literature. The word Brahman is found everywhere throughout the Upanishads. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are all taken together as the absolute truth. Brahman and Paramatma realization are considered stages toward the ultimate realization, which is realization of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the real conclusion of all Vedic literature. Thus, according to the evidences afforded by various Vedic scriptures, the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa is accepted as the ultimate goal of Brahman realization. The Bhagavad Gita 7.7 confirms that there is nothing superior to Kṛṣṇa. Madhvacharya, one of the greatest acharyas in Brahma's disciplic succession, has stated in his explanation of the Vedanta Sutra that everything can be seen through the authorities of the scriptures. He has quoted a verse from the Bhavishya Purana in which it is stated that the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, Mahabharata, Pancharatra, and the original Ramayana are actually Vedic evidence. The Puranas accepted by the Vaishnavas are also considered Vedic evidence. Indeed, whatever is contained in that literature should be taken without argument as the ultimate conclusion. And all these literatures proclaim Kṛṣṇa to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Haribol. We have completed chapter number 24, and we shall begin chapter number 25 tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description. Please check out these books, check out our website shravanamdiaries.com, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.